All right, now that the nice lady has told us that the recording is in progress, we will start our slideshow 2 for the evening, and we will get rolling here. So good evening, everybody. Hope everyone made it through the thunderstorms. I know we've had a little bit of a conversation about that.
Zach, we're not seeing your screen yet.
Oh, you are not seeing my screen yet. That probably would be helpful. Let me share slideshow. All right, so now let's actually get started with the slideshow now that you can see the screen. That's going to be very helpful. So again, I am Zach Cintron. I think we've all met at some point before. If not, it's good to see you online, and I'm excited to see you all in person in the next week or so. Joining me this evening is Mike Sarnowski, our VP of Sports, who will be helping out in lieu of Steve Bennett, who has lost internet thanks to the storms this evening. Jack Brosis may be joining us, but I know storms are rolling out in his direction too. So hopefully he'll be able to hop on the line with us. The agenda for the day, again, we're going to hit some protocol stuff, events, qualifying information, the schedule for the upcoming weekend, facility layout, logistics, competition, rules and reminders, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end. If you have any questions, feel free to type them and throw them in chat during the presentation. Feel free to put up a hand too. If there's a good spot where we can, take a pause and take a question, we will. But for the most part, we will roll through this evening. So the management team coming back for the games management team is a lot of faces and names you should recognize. We're returning 99.9% of our team, except for 1 or 2 people that had other plans, unfortunately. But for the most part, our main team will be there. So we'll be in really good shape to facilitate the afternoon and the morning session. Again, it's all faces you should know. So if you have questions, please feel free to grab us. For the most part, let the management team do their thing. If you have a question, grab myself, Mike Sarnowski, Steve Bennett, even Melissa Anger or Ryan Kelchner, the other sports directors, as we're all running around. We're more than happy to help you throughout the afternoon. So Mike, do you want to take over here on some protocol stuff?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you to everybody, all the coaches who are with us now or listening to the recording. We're really excited about how well things have been going for Maryland in general. As far as COVID goes, we're one of the few states who's been able to have something even close to competition returning, particularly at summer games. And we're excited about being able to start up and to have as many as 50% of the athletes who did kayaking in the past back and with us. So with that, though, as you've all experienced, I'm sure, the protocols have been shifting around. And we shared with you at the preseason webinar, the updated protocol that we had for COVID then. It's been tweaked a little bit. We were waiting at that point for some additional information to come, and we have received it. So I want to touch on it tonight because it also, it adds an additional thing that we need to do and has some implications potentially for our competition, if not at the time trials, then potentially at the finals. So it says there, for the time being, we won't suspend in-person programming. Actually, the new protocol, the way it's laid out, programming like training and potentially competitions can continue pretty much at any of the levels that are there. Where we phase is in terms of shifting from low incidence to moderate to high is all based around 2 things. One is the percentage, or I'm sorry, the number of new cases out of 100,000 based on a 7-day moving average. Maryland right now, as of yesterday, we get the stats a day late or a day afterwards, is at 5.2 out of 100,000. And we'll talk about that in a little bit in a minute. Then also, we can factor in the percentage of our participants, everybody who was there with us at an event or at a training activity, the percentage of them who are fully vaccinated. So we'll talk a little bit more about vaccination as we go through. But Zach, why don't you go ahead and give us the next one. And so here you see what we're calling low risk, moderate risk, and significant risk. To be in the low risk, the green, which is virtually back to normal, if you will, we need to either have 10 or fewer cases per 100,000, which Maryland right now is still at that, or 80% of the participants being fully vaccinated at either a training or at an event. And in that situation, whatever the local regulations are for event size and so on down the line are in place, so we would follow whatever the state of Maryland would have. And we are also, I should point out, looking at these numbers based on a statewide. We're not breaking them down by county as we had previously. Again, that's almost back to normal. If we were to have the event today, we would be operating under that. The moderate risk is where we have between 11 and 15 cases per 100,000, and also we have fewer than 80% vaccinated, because to be in green, we just need one or the other there of the 10 and so on. And then, and you can see that there's some additional mitigation, if you will, some protocols come back into place, and we'll talk about those in a minute. And then we have the significant risk, which hopefully, knock on wood, we won't get to, but even with that, really the only additional thing that comes into play is that size restrictions, potentially, at least for inside, would be factored in. So Zach, let's go to the next. This kind of breaks it out, and we certainly will send these to you. They're also available on our website, as well as SOI's website, the much more detailed, I think, 14-page document on this. So again, in low risk, you can see what we've got there. You're all familiar with the communicable disease waiver, which you're all doing. In green or low risk, there's no screening that needs to be done on site. However, if we do shift to the moderate risk, we would have to do screening on site. We wouldn't do temperature checks. And I'm making that point because there is as you'll see in a moment, there's a chance that we may be operating under the moderate risk, or hopefully not, but potentially in the significant risk for one or more or both of our dates that we've got coming up. As is the case across the board, if anybody has a positive COVID test, they need to stop participation for 10 days, and 7 of those days being without any symptoms. And then athletes and partners, competitors would need to receive medical clearance and such. And then for masking, when we're in green, we just follow whatever the local restrictions are. I haven't heard any change for the state of Maryland. And we'll, because again, Maryland actually is in relatively good shape at the moment, even with what the CDC has mentioned recently. We're not in one of those high risk categories or territories at the moment. For those who aren't fully vaccinated, they would need to wear their mask except during rigorous exercise, which is sort of the standard that had been in place when we were operating earlier. If we do get into the moderate risk category, the yellow category, masks would be required for everyone, except when they're participating in their competition and their exercise as such. I see Al, you have the question. The per 100,000 is based on the population of the state of Maryland. That is correct. And there's a website that's handled by or hosted by Brown University that tracks all that we go to and track it every day. Okay, Zach, you want to get to the second chart for here? With distancing in the green category, the low risk, it's not necessary to do that to socially distance within sport activities, but it's encouraged throughout when you're not in a sport activity. If we do shift over to moderate risk, then we do need to observe that at all times. Transportation, and this is essentially across the board, this doesn't change. You want to encourage private transportation, families or agencies driving their own athletes and bringing them to the events. If Special Olympics coordinates the transportation, and that could be where Special Olympics is either providing it or Special Olympics, and that includes you as coaches or any of your area leadership, if Special Olympics is coordinating, say, a carpool for folks, then that would kick in as being Special Olympics transportation. Even if family members are driving, if Special Olympics is organizing it, then that falls in that. In that case, everyone in the vehicle needs to wear a mask, but however many seats there are in the vehicle, that's how many you can have in there. And it doesn't matter there's no distancing that needs to be. Whatever the seating is there, that you can go forward with that. For accommodations or housing, it's pretty much it's exactly the same in low and moderate risk. If everybody is fully vaccinated, you can have up to 4 people per room, and sharing a room, of course, following the Special Olympics housing guidelines as well, which means no shared beds unless the 2 individuals are married, and there's a couple other things with that. If a person is unvaccinated, they can only room with either a fully vaccinated person or someone from their own household. And again, that's the same in both cases. Notice there, we'll get to that in a minute about that. We're not excluding anybody who is not vaccinated. There just are protocols and some safety things that need to be followed. When we're in green, spectators and observers and such are permitted based on whatever the local guidelines are. If we do shift to yellow, we need to keep them separated from the athletes or from the delegations, and they can't be coming in. If anyone on the call had been at summer games, we set it up that way as well. To some degree, we had a separated spectator seating area. If we do get into the orange or the significant risk category, spectators who aren't basically anybody who's not a member of a delegation would not be permitted. Other than, there's a couple variations on that in terms of support for the athlete, but that's relatively few people that would apply to. And then meals, it's essentially back to normal for green. They just suggest staggering meal times. If we do get into the moderate risk category, we wouldn't be doing buffet meals, but we typically don't do those other than at an overnight event. And then if we do get into the orange, we would not be providing meals. Everyone would need to bring their own from a safety standpoint. So, Zach, you want to go to the next? So I mentioned about vaccines. And again, vaccines are not a requirement for participation. And the only thing that would change if someone is not fully vaccinated is they would need to wear a mask when they're not participating in their activity. We will, however, be tracking and collecting information on vaccination. We shared that, it was discussed with area directors back on the last meeting that we had with them on the 17th of this month. And then we sent a follow-up with them earlier today that we are going to go forward and track the information, but that is solely for the purpose of handling overnight housing, as well as tracking that percentage of individuals who are vaccinated or fully vaccinated. But it will not have any impact. No one who is unvaccinated is going to have anything marked on their bib or on their name tag or anything like that. We're keeping it quiet. You as a coach and the area leaders certainly have the right to know the status of the individuals in your program, but it's not something we're going to be sharing publicly. And again, just as a reiteration, it can't affect any registration decisions. But Zach, if you go ahead. So as I mentioned earlier, to be in the green, we either have to be at 10 or fewer per 100,000 in the state of Maryland, or 80% fully vaccinated of the people who are at the event and are participating. You can see there, we were going gangbusters, and then, like much of the country, that curve is starting to come up. So again, we're right now at 5.2. Looking at the trajectory, no one really knows what's going to happen, but it is possible that we could get above that 10 either by the 14th of this month, of August rather, when we have the finals, or potentially by the 7th when we have the time trials. So it behooves us to be prepared. And while we have been developing a plan on tracking vaccinations, we're going to accelerate it and kind of do I don't want to call it a jerry rig, but a modified means of collecting it for kayaking, so that we have the potential even if that percentage goes, or that number goes above 10 per 100,000, we have the potential to still be in the green because we know we have we've hit the 80% mark for vaccinations. So with that in mind, Zach, if you want to go ahead. Just mentioned that there. Touched on all of those. So we will be requesting, and this has gone to the area leaders as well. It will go out in the follow-up that Zach will send with these slides and the recording. But we will be asking each area, most likely through you as the coach, to send us the vaccination status of the people who are coming as part of your delegation. And in that, we're not asking right then to send documentation on that, although we will be wanting that, as you can see in the next bullet. But what when we recognize you may not be able to track everybody down by then and get that back, but just give us what you know. And if anybody we don't know what their status is and they're considered for our purposes of tracking as being unvaccinated, at least just for the tracking purposes. And then what we're going to ask also is to have everybody bring whatever documentation with them. If they have their card or want to bring a copy of their card, that's fine. We're not going to take the card from people. But what we will do is either scan or take a picture of it right there on site and use that to record that their vaccination is good. We're looking at the trajectory of the curve. There's a halfway decent chance that the time trials will be fine. But if we can catch all this information, the time trials, we'll have a better sense as to whether we're close to staying in the green when we get to the finals. So Zach, next slide. So we'll be tracking that just in terms of implications, and we certainly will give you follow-up information. We're asking for this by the 4th so that we have time to figure out if we need to do anything and can get back to you with any changes there. But if we're in the green, if we're either above well, I'm not sure why I shouldn't have highlighted that one as green. So if we go above the 10 per 100K, one of the things that we may do is have a separate designated family and spectator area on site. So they are separated from the delegations. We really don't have any reasonable way in advance to track how many of the spectators or family members who aren't part of your delegation, how many of them are vaxxed or not vaxxed. So by separating them out, they would not be included in that when we calculate the 80%. We basically would be removing them from the equation. But we also recognize that means there's going to be some potential challenges, because I know at least historically at kayaking, your delegation, most delegations will have a single tent or a couple tents that cluster together and everybody hangs out under there. We certainly want to avoid that if we can, avoid missing or messing with that if we can, but some of this may be out of our hands. But so one of the ways to not have to worry about masking and not have to worry about social distancing and so on down the line will be if we separate out the spectators and family members who aren't part of the delegation. It helps the percentage to a certain degree. And just because anecdotally, having talked to a number of athletes, a pretty high percentage of our athletes have been vaccinated. They've been on a number of sessions online with them, and they're all talking about how they just got their vaccine and so on. So if the incidence goes above the 10 per 100 or 100,000 people, and our vaccination percentage is lower than 80%, those three things kick in. We'll do the on-site screening. We want to do a temperature check at that point. Masks will be required except during rigorous exercise. So when they're, I would define that as when the athlete gets into staging or starts to get into their kayak until the time they're off the water. And we probably would do a similar thing that the volunteers that are down there hauling the boats. I don't know if you've hauled the boats down there ever, but that's rigorous exercise. So, so there would be some folks that would be there, but when they're hanging out and, you know, waiting for their turn, that type of thing, they would need to be wearing masks. We would have to implement social distancing except during competition per the regulations. And there also, if we got to that stage, spectators would have to be separated from the delegations anyway. So that's what would happen if we get into the yellow. And then I couldn't find an orange highlighter, so I had to use red. Sorry about that. If we go above 15 per 100,000 and that vaccine percentage is below 80, everything above in the yellow kicks in, plus we do need to do temperature checks on site, plus spectators would not be permitted. I'll come back to that in a minute. And participants would have to bring their own meals. We recognize that if we say spectators may not be permitted, that will have a major impact on the ability of your athletes to be there, given how many people depend upon the rides. I mean, what could happen, although I don't know how many families or agencies would do this, is that they could sit in their car. Or potentially, if we have the delegations over by the boathouse and such, potentially we'd need to look at this distance-wise. The families could stay in Wilmer Park, which is the park by the pavilion that's up on stilts and such there, because that is literally another location. So we'd look at that. But anyhow, our purpose behind sharing all this tonight is twofold. One, to give you that heads up. And again, your area leaders got this information by email earlier today, to give you that heads up that we're going to track, start collecting the information. We want to get kind of a soft number without the documentation ahead of time, so we have at least a sense if we're even remotely close to 80%. And then we'll collect the pictures and so on down the line on site. We will handle taking those pictures, but we will need to make sure that folks have their documentation with them, so we can do that. And hopefully we can avoid that. So, but yeah, so anyhow, we wanted to share you so you knew that ahead of time, and then also so that you know these are some things that might come into play if those numbers don't go the way that we want them to go. So just trying to be transparent, as upfront as we possibly can be. Should also point out that the protocol, in case anybody isn't aware, the protocols that we shared and went through just a moment ago, they are not specific to Maryland. They are actually not just nationwide, they are internationally applied. So we need to adhere to them, and we've shown that we can have competitions under those restrictions or those challenges, but and hopefully we won't have to, but we just want to be sure everyone's aware of it as best they can be. Okay. Before, I think, Zach, that's the end of my slide, this section. Before we go to the stuff, yeah, are there any questions on what I just covered? And again, hopefully we'll stay in the green. But just
I
to be
have
sure.
one question, Mike.
Sure.
Could they take a picture of their card and email it to the coach?
That would be totally fine. In fact, that's actually how we're going to be doing it when we don't have a gun to our head because we have an event in 10 days.
Yeah.
So that's totally fine. We didn't want to implement that whole, and we can deal then with working out naming and such. The one thing that would be required,
Because I'm thinking like people might forget and get to the event all the way in Chestertown to find out they don't have the card.
yeah, well, and that's, I mean, if that's, they can still participate, it just may affect what protocol we're in. The one thing that we do ask for that, or if they scan it or whatever, is just making sure it's legible. So the one other thing that we may be able to do, we found this out today, is we can't look this up, but there is an online portal for folks to look up their status from the state health department. That, at least in theory, I'm not sure how up to date it is. I'm sure it's not instantaneous. That you can look up. Actually, you can print your own sheet again if you wanted to. But we may be able to look that up on site. For an event the size of kayaking, it's not unreasonable to do that if it would be necessary with that. I'm not promising we can do that. I don't know what the user needs in order to access their account or their records there, but we're certainly looking at all sorts of different options that make it that give us every chance to stay in the green that we can. So, but yeah, them taking a picture again, that's actually what we're going to be asking folks to do ultimately, and sending it, and then the coach can just forward it on to us. They don't have to wait until that Saturday. If you got it, send it in.
Okay.
And then we'll deal with right now the naming of the file and the stuff that we need on our end of it. So good question. Any other questions with this? And again, I hope we stay in the green. Okay, Zach, back to you, sir.
All right, folks. So we're gonna hop into the kayaking specific stuff. Again, for time trials events, we offer 3 race types. We do our 200, 500 meter races where we capture the times for our athletes that are 200 and 500 meter racers. Then we do our short distance races, the 100 meter, 200 meter races. We'll capture both times for that as well. And then we'll do our usual 1K race at the end. That worked out really well last time we did this in 2019. We had enough time to do a 1K time trial, and it helped tremendously for Divisioning 4 championships. Again, the schedule is 7:30. We start having boats coming in. We'll lay them out like we typically do. Volunteers come in at 8. Delegations can start checking in at quite honestly before 8:45 if the head coach gets there, which a lot of the times the head coach is the driver for the boat trailers as well, so they can check in when they get there. 8:45 to 9:10 is the opportunity to get on the water. If you want to get your athletes on the water, you can to kind of check out the course a little bit. Again, you will need a coach to be on the water with your athletes to do so. And we did add a 10-minute extension from what was on the fact sheet, so we could give you a little bit more time on the water there. But at 9:10, we do need the boats off the water. We will do a quick coaches meeting at 9:15. Any updates that we have, if there is a change of protocol on site that we need to move to based on vaccination status or whatever it may be, we will try to give you a heads up earlier in the day prior to the event, some way, shape, or form. But we may also, it may take until the coaches meeting to get a final determination on everybody's status. 9:30, 9:45, we really want to kick off competition with that 200, 500 meter race. And then we're going to roll through the day from there. Again, we just remind you that there is a little bit of a lull between the 200, 500 time trial and the 200, 100, because we need to get our timers from the 500 meter mark down by the houses all the way to the 100 meter tent where they then keep the times on the shore. So be patient with us and we'll get that worked out. And then 11:30 lunches will come in. For lunch distribution, we will do what we did the last time and have them pre-packaged by what your lunch order is by team. So then 1 or 2 people can come up, grab all your lunches, and you can move along. We should keep it nice and easy. And there go my lights. So kayak drop-off schedule, it looks like St. Mary's, Jack, of course, being his home field, is going to be there Friday. Frederick, I believe Friday is coming in. And then additionally, I didn't put on here Lower Shore for Pam, who is on here. They tend to use Kent County's boats. So we shouldn't have an issue with them either. Right now, drop-off schedule is just 2 teams. It's Anne Arundel and Hartford. So I have you guys just right at the beginning of the drop-off time. But for the most part, as long as you guys are in and unloading boats before 8 a.m., we should be good to go. Again, we don't have the laundry list of programs coming in that we typically do this year because of reduced participation. So the closer you can get to coming in at your time, fantastic. But we just love you in before 8 a.m. Because then we can start settling out the rest of the parking as well. Again, the trailer unloading, we're going to stick with the same game plan. If you're bringing in a trailer, please just bring it straight in. And as long as nobody else is backed in and unloading, back it straight in and we'll unload your boats onto the grass. When you're done with that, please pull into the rest of the gravel parking lot and park the trailers in the mid part of the grass so we can get cars in between. especially if you're going to be a program that decides to leave your trailer and boats in between weekends. That is an option. You're allowed to do that. But again, we need to get the trailers out of the way so we can get more vehicles for participants in. If for some reason everybody decides to bring 2 or 3 trailers of boats, which nobody's going to do, we do have overflow parking and trailer parking in the armory as well. So again, back your boats in, let's get them unloaded, and then please pull into the grass area. We'll have some assistance to get you set up as well. The course map, the course has not changed. We're still doing our 3 lanes as usual. We're going to have our red stars where you will see the safety kayakers on the inside and towards the back end of the 500-meter course. We'll have our pontoon boat hovering out in the middle to end section of the course. The pink buoy markers are going to be what they usually are for the 100 and 200 meter. And then you got your black diamond there, which tends to be our main safety boat. There is a chance that we may have 2 safety boats this year because we've gotten some extra help. But for sure, we will have 1 motorized safety boat where that black diamond is. Venue map. We are not changing the venue layout. Things worked very well in 2019, and we anticipate it'll work just as well as before. The teal area that you see, again, is where we will drop our boats. We will have our boats all lined up in the grass so the volunteers can pull them as easy as possible. Right next to that teal, between the green outline and the red outline, there's a little yellow rectangle. We will have our porta pots there. And we will additionally, the old boathouse, which is behind where the new boathouse is, those bathrooms will be open as well. Otherwise, programs will be operating out of that big blue area in the grass there. So when your program gets there, go ahead, stake a claim, set up a tent, get yourself set up, give yourself some room. We got plenty of space out there to spread out. We should be set up for a good afternoon and a good day overall. Registration and check-in. Again, when programs come to check in, please just send your head coach to check in. Unless we are in a scenario where we have to do screenings and individual check-ins, we are going to go back to the head coach checks in. We give them the delegation packet with all the bibs and credentials and lunch information and all that stuff right to the head coach, so we don't have to do individual check-ins. If for some reason we do go back to needing to screen people, we will do individual check-in, and we will give you a heads up on that as soon as we know.
I cannot do it. I'm listening. You get up.
Additionally, just to let you guys know, to help us out this year, I think we might have done it for Championships 2019, but it was so long ago. When you put the tape on your boat for your athlete's name, once you get the bib numbers for your participating athletes, if you could put a piece of tape on the boat near one of the handles that has the athlete's bib number as well, it is a million times easier for our volunteers to pull 3 numbers of a boat than look for a whole name. So as soon as you get that, if you can update that, worst case scenario, if you get on site in the morning, we'll do a quick check and we will hand you some tape and a Sharpie if we need to, and we'll get them on there before we do staging and stuff. Again, it is just tremendously easier for our volunteers to be told a 3-digit number and look for that 3-digit number in a county than be looking for a name. Course inspection, like I said, 8:45 to 9:10. Get out on the water, check things out. Again, we're not changing the course. I don't anticipate. We're actually going to set up the course tomorrow. So if there's any major updates, we will let you know beginning of next week. If you are going to put kayakers out on the water to inspect the course, give it 1 run or 2 runs, a coach needs to be out there on the water during the inspection period. They can't be out there alone, especially because the safety boaters will only have 1 or 2 in the main safety boat at that point. We may not have our full armada of safety kayakers to assist as well. So please, coaches, if you are going to do course inspection with your athletes, please be out there with them. Again, I mentioned the coaches meeting 9:15. Please send whoever your head coach is. If you want an assistant coach or somebody to come to get some information, great. We're going to do it right at the top of the beach there where we typically stage the boats. So we'll meet there probably no more than 5 minutes. I'll give you any updates that you may need, and I will take any questions that you may have last second, and we'll work through whatever we need to work through to get you guys all set up. But again, one head coach or a head coach and an assistant coach, 9:15, top of the beach area where we stage the boats. Parking. So Wilmer Park, that Mike was talking about, which is next door on the other side of the stilted pavilion, will be available. We tend to send our volunteers for parking there. So that tends to fill up pretty quick. The good news is across the street from Wilmer Park is a train station that has another parking lot that will be 100% ours. We've already worked out a deal with the construction company that owns it that will 100% be available to other people. We will have some first come, first serve parking in the gravel area. There are some handicap spots there that we would like to leave open for folks that truly need it. But if you have somebody in your program that needs to park in the closer to the boathouse, tell them to get there a little bit early, and they'll probably have an opportunity to park in the gravel parking area. If for some reason the gravel parking area is filled up and you have somebody that does need to park closer or can't walk, you could always do a drop off too. It's perfectly fine to pull into the gravel parking lot by the boathouse, do a drop off, pull out, park in Wilmer parking lot or the train station. It's not a super far walk, but I do recognize that walk for some of our athletes will be a little difficult. Additionally, parking that will be a little bit closer to, there is I forget what the building is technically called. There's a new biology building right next door to the boathouse that they do a lot of wildlife conservation and water conservation at. There's a gravel parking lot in there too that we can park in as well. So again, parking lot for the gravel parking lots is very much first come, first serve. So if you have somebody that needs to access a closer walk, get there a little bit early and it'll be worth it for sure. Delegation spaces. When we're talking delegation spaces, we're talking that big blue area that I showed you on the map where you can set up your tents, where you can bring your lawn chairs, where you can kind of hang out. Again, bring pop-up tents. You're going to have plenty of room to spread out. Again, we had plenty of room last time we were there in 2019 with 120 something athletes. With our number that we're going to have about 50 to 60 this year, you'll have more than enough room to spread out. So get room. Bring multiple tents, set yourself up for success for the day of having a nice spot to hang out. Again, share spaces. I don't think we're going to have any fights over our land and setting up where you want to set up. Everybody should have a good spot. And again, we will bring delegation signs for you guys to hang on your pop-up tents to identify for your athletes and families and spectators that are looking for your teams and for your tents. Continuing on for delegation spaces, again, just a reminder, if we move into the moderate or significant risk and we do not meet that 80% vaccination threshold, we will do a separated area for delegation members and family members to make our percentage a little bit better and just to keep everyone separated. We'll let you know if we need to go to that game plan, what the separation game plan is as well. We are going to take a look at that when we're out there setting up the course tomorrow, and we will have a definitive game plan for you if we need to go to that. And again, if we can get to that 80% vaccination rate, we're good to go. So again, like Mike was saying, if you can push your programs to get vaccination cards and information turned in as much as possible, that'll set us up for much more success. One thing I will remind folks too for delegation spaces, we do set up a tent and some chairs for on the shoreline for the 100-meter timers when we do that race. Please, please, please remind your participants and family members and such that as much as we would love to have a tent there for them to hang out in, we need that for timing. So please stay out of that tent so that we can get into that when we switch over to the 100-meter, 200-meter race and we can roll straight through. I do see chat coming in. Okay. Al asked about handicap parking. If you do have somebody that specifically needs handicap parking, you can send us that information too, and I'll put together a little list of folks that we do need spots for. And we will do our best to keep those spots reserved for folks that need it. But again, that's going to be a first come, first serve thing. So Al, you can send that over with some of the other information that I'm looking for that we talked about earlier. So the pier, so where all the docks are, super limited access, except for coaches or athletes who need to swap kayaks. And when we mean swap kayaks, it's somebody sharing a kayak that we need to change when they're directly on the dock because we're moving through the divisions and there's not much of a turnaround time to get them all the way back to shore. For the most part, it's just management team out on the dock and volunteers. It gets really crowded really fast out there. So we will have a sign up at the dock entrance of, volunteers and management and staff personnel only. So again, remind your family members that it's best for them if they want a good spot to ski to go up into the pavilion while things are rolling. It seems like it's further away, but it probably gives the best view because it's an elevated location. Medical, we will have medical. It will be Pam, who you're used to seeing at a lot of our other Special Olympics events. So Pam will be coming out and she will be mostly on the deck of the boathouse where we do opening ceremonies, but there may be times where she roams. Again, if there's a medical emergency that you need and isn't right in our competition area where we have eyeballs going 24/7, please grab a staff member, grab a GMT member, and we will get medical to get whoever needs it taken care of. Food services, we are going to do box lunches from Redner's like we've done in the past, which are the ham and turkey sandwiches or the salad. Al Jank said that he approved of the salad last time we did it. So I think they're pretty good lunches if they're Al approved. And so we're going to go back to the same folks. They're very excited to help us out. But in order for us to get lunches in and requested and get everything we need that information back from head coaches and area directors by August 2nd. And then for championships, we need it back by the 10th. So if you can get those in, please work with your area directors who should have the file that we sent out a couple days ago to get lunches turned in, and we will get you set up. Again, we will also work to have lunches pre-packed by your team orders by the forms that you sent in. So when you come up, 1 or 2 people should be able to pick up your lunches in a box and walk away with it. We're not doing individual lunch service for each individual in the delegations. Again, lunch is usually on site and ready by 11:30 a.m. So remind your athletes and delegation members that 11:30 is kind of the sweet spot there. Family services and registration for championships. We will do family hospitality during championships, which will be on the boat deck. Debbie Credito always handles that for us. So during championships, we'll have information about other Special Olympics programming. We'll have snacks. We'll have water bottles for family members that they can access on the boathouse deck. So tell them to look forward that for championships. If families are coming out for time trials, remind them that they're not registered delegation members, so there won't be a lunch provided for them. So they need to pack their own lunch. There are also a bunch of great restaurants in Chestertown too. There's a restaurant that's right up the street. You can get in a boat and technically paddle to it if you wanted to, called 98 Cannon. It's one of my favorite places out there. Fantastic lunch place. So there's an opportunity for folks to go off-site that are non-registered delegation members as well. So as far as registration for championships goes, it's the same plan that we've done in the past. We register everyone into championships and then bring them over to time trials in GMS for the time trials. And then we will re-advance scores from the time trials, final scores from the time trials to championships. So after time trials concludes, I will send you guys all a roster with your final time trial scores. Essentially, all I need you guys to do is look it over and say, yep, all these people are attending. Those scores look right based on what we saw from time trials. We're good to go. Registration for championships should be super, super easy. I do have one question here. Oh,
that's not really a question.
It's not a question. It is not a question. Al's just throwing me off my groove at this point. He's just testing me now that we're back for the first time. So inclement weather plan, competition, if it's light to moderate rain, good news is kayaking is a water sport. You're going to get wet. So as long as it's not a torrential downpour, we will paddle. With that said, one of the things that we will also look for is water conditions. If it gets really difficult, if it gets really choppy, we'll pull people off the water. We're going to make sure it's safe. We're going to not put people out there in any sort of situation where they're going to be at risk. And we're also not going to put any of our safety boaters at risk either. So we'll pull everyone off the water if we need to. If lightning occurs, we will cut competition immediately. For the most part, we ask folks to retreat to their vehicles. That might be a little difficult for some people, so we can retreat into the boathouse, either the new boathouse, the old boathouse. If we need to, we can put people into the pavilion, which isn't ideal, but it's better than being out in the middle of nowhere. Additionally, for weather information about overall event weather, things look good as of right now. We got some storms on the Friday before. I'm hoping they actually push up and out of Friday into Wednesday or Thursday of that week and we get even clearer. But for the most part, it's looking good right now. Our Weather Century app says there's a little threat of some sprinkling rain on Sunday that could push into Saturday. But for the most part, it looks good. We will try to update coaches and area directors if we need to make a move on canceling and pushing to the rain date, which is Sunday the 8th. For kayaking, try to make that call Thursday rather than Friday because of the travel that most people have to do specifically for kayaking. With that said, sometimes it can go into Friday and become a little bit shorter of a turnaround time on what we're looking at if the weather's flip-flopping back and forth. But Thursday or Friday, if weather looks bad, we will reach out to head coaches and area directors via email to let them know what the game plan is. If we're going to go for Saturday and see how it is, if we're going to push it to Sunday, we will let you know Thursday or Friday of next week. Some rules, again, not going over all the rules for the most part. You guys know the rules. You've been training all season long. Your athletes should know the rule. But again, this is a lot about, going outside of the lane, returning to your proper lane. If they fully finish outside of their lane, it's a DQ. And then if you impede on another person, that's a DQ as well. For the 1K, the kayak that is in the lead has the right of way at all times. That's how it is. That's how it's always been. Again, we try to do heats of groups of 5 based off of qualifying time, so the tempo for everybody makes sense. And that's what we've always done as well. With the disqualifications, essentially for time trials, instead of reading this whole slide, we will still note disqualifications if an athlete does something that would justify a disqualification, but we still want to get a good time for them at time trials. It's not about what place they come in. It's not about DQing them or whatever. We will let you know if they would have been DQ'd so you can try to work on that in the week leading to championships. But we 100% want to get a good time for them so we can get them into the right division for championships. If there is impeding on an athlete's initial run or something that happens to put your athlete in a spot where they didn't get their best time, if you see it and Mike Myers on the starting line or somebody on a boat doesn't see it, please let us know. We'll do a rerun. But again, try to let us know while we're still running that event and we have the timers in place. If it's in the 200/500 meter race and we've already moved those 500 meter timers to come over to the shore, it's going to be really hard for us to rerun a 500 meter. So again, the main thing for time trials, we will let you know if somebody would be disqueued because of something that they did so you can try to fix it. We want to get a good time. That's our main thing that we're looking for. And if we need to do a rerun, and if for some reason something happens, and again, Mike Myers at the starting line or Caprice on the pontoon boat or George at shore timing doesn't see it, please let us know and we will work to get a rerun done for your athlete as well. Division and competition schedules. So when it comes to divisions, I ask for qualifying times if you guys happen to get them at your local qualifiers that you do. First of all, thank you guys. You did a very good job of getting qualifying times and turning them in. That makes the divisions for time trials, even though they don't need to be perfect because we're looking to just get times, it makes them better. So we have athletes paddling in time trials that are same ability levels. and it pushes other athletes to be just as good as those other athletes in the lanes next to them. We've seen a much better divisioning success rate at championships while having good divisions at time trials. So again, thank you guys for getting in times for all the athletes that you could, knowing that it's not possible for every athlete with crazy weather, practice schedules getting thrown off throughout the summer. Thank you guys for that very much. You will get your normal packet on site that has your report, all the bibs, the labels on the bibs, the events. It'll have the MLB sequence report for everybody going in time sequence order. You guys are going to get all the good stuff as usual. So you should be able to plan out your day with that. Additionally, I always look to try to get out the digital version of that paperwork to you guys the Thursday before competition. So ideally, we will have everything to you guys so you can plan out your day by next Thursday when it comes to divisions and heats and so on and so forth. Again, courses are the same thing as last year, 3 lanes. The 1K is the down and back. Again, lane inspection, get on the water to get a test run in, 8:45 to 9:10. Got to be off the water at 9:10. If for somebody or a program where somebody arrives late, we will not be able to accommodate everybody on the water to get a test run. So if you want your team to get a test run, please, please, please come early. At worst case scenario, please come on time. Uniforms, again.
Zach, hey, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I thought maybe when we had the course come up that it may flow into some rules that are, anyhow, Al asked a question about the disqualification or the 5-second penalty. Certainly we wouldn't apply the penalty during time trials. It serves no purpose. It actually gives a misleading time. But when it comes to competitions, I don't know if you know, since Jack's not here, about whether the 5-second penalty will be assessed if they leave their lane and come back in without impeding. And I honestly don't know without looking it up.
Al, I don't remember off the top of my head, and I don't want to give you a wrong answer either. I can probably check with Mike Myers if I can't get a hold of Jack, because those between Jack and Mike Myers, they're kind of the decision makers on those two things. So let me go check, and I will come back to you with an answer, and I will put it in the follow-up email that everybody will get, so everybody will see it.
Yeah.
Good question though.
Yeah, I do recall our conversation was that the 5 seconds would be imposed on one, but not the other. And because, and I'm pretty sure it was that it would be imposed during competition, rightfully so, but not during time trials, because I figure if the person's wandered out of their lane and come back in, they've already gone an extra, 10, 15, 20 feet or more just to do that. So, it's kind of like a double whammy if you throw 5 seconds on there.
Yeah,
it actually puts them into a misleading division for the finals then too.
Yes.
Yeah, again, we're not looking to hurt anybody with times for time trials. We want the truest time we can possibly get. And quite honestly, if somebody has a bad impede where they're impeding on someone else and they're hurting themselves and not only the person they're impeding on, we may rerun them both, quite honestly, because we want good times coming out of time trials more than anything. So that's a great question. We won't hurt people with the impact of the -5 seconds or the added 5 seconds. But I will double check on the for competition with the impeding and they get back in their lane. I will get a clarified answer for you, Al.
Okay. And before I forget, after we get done with everything, if I can stick around for a couple more minutes, I've got one question that came up today regarding lunches.
Yep. We'll touch base with that after we close up here. Perfect.
Great.
So uniforms, again, got to wear shirts, shorts, pants during all practices and competitions. Need to wear your PFD. Again, highly recommend that there's a whistle attached to your PFD. I know not everybody has that. I will admit on my personal PFD, I do not have a whistle attached, but it's really, really good to have for your athletes. Helmets are optional. Water shoes and polarized sunglasses are highly recommended. Again, getting on that water, if it's a sunny day, it reflects really hard. And the one thing that I will add that's not part of uniform is I will remind you guys, sunscreen. Please, please, please remember tons and tons of sunscreen. As a very fair-skinned person myself, Debbie Credito is in charge of making sure I put on my sunscreen all day long. So I will be reminding you every time she reminds me. Equipment regulations. Again, every boat needs a flotation device in it. Jack talks about it in all of his coaches' trainings. Again, it's not just for your athletes and their safety. If we need to retrieve a boat and it's filled with water, it makes it a lot easier and safer on our safety boaters as well to retrieve that boat so they don't get sucked in trying to pull a boat out. Again, boats should be marked with their appropriate size. I think we've done that in the past. But again, the most important markings that we truly need are the name and the bib number once you have the bib number for retrieval of the boats for staging. Again, whatever you do in time trials, boat-wise, whatever your athlete is in boat-wise at time trials, they need to be in at competition. I don't know if we've ever run into that where that's been an issue because it's very odd to put somebody in a smaller boat and then get into a bigger boat to race in. It's super uncomfortable. I don't even like going from smaller to bigger boats for sure. Again, using the same style paddle. Again, if you're using a spoon paddle, don't use a spoon paddle and then come in with one of the carbon fibered wing paddles. One, it'll probably be pretty difficult for your athlete to adjust. And two, there is a pretty big difference between those two paddles. And again, reminder with the name and the bib number for your kayaker for retrieval of the staging process. Again, equipment reminder. Do you have something that's prior to equipment here? Oh, Al, you're on mute still.
There we go. As far as the inflatables in the bow and the stern, so I went out and bought a bunch of inflatable beach balls that are about 18 inches in diameter. I filled them up halfway with air, and I can't even get them in there. And if I do, then some of my athletes can't get to their foot pegs. Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, there's some smaller ones that we've used in the past. I know I've gone out for even personal boats and I've gotten the dollar store has these like little 8 to 9 inch ones as well.
Okay.
So it's good to look around. I know if you get the standard beach ball that doesn't fit all the boats, it'll fit like the 10 footers that are relatively wide compared to how long they are. It fits in those, but it struggles to fit in the longer boats that are more narrow. I will say that for sure. So if you start getting into a 11, 12, 13 foot, some of those ones are really thin up at the top and it's hard to get the beach balls into them if you're getting the good old 12, 16, 8-inch beach ball. So I would say take a trip to potentially the dollar store. That's where I've gotten them before.
Okay. Most of our kayaks have got the little piece of styrofoam that the manufacturer puts in there.
Yeah. I mean, that's always a good addition to, again, we just want to make sure that there's something in there because there are boats out there that have nothing. Or there's boats that have been around so long that there's a leak in the flotation that's built into it, or the styrofoams come out or something like that. Again, we really need something. The beach ball is Jack's usual go-to recommendation though.
Thank you.
Yep. So equipment reminders. Please have these things set up before your athlete's kayak needs to go to staging, so we're not setting them up as they're getting ready to be staged and we're sliding them down the beach. Make sure their foot pegs are set correctly. So when your athletes get there, it wouldn't hurt to do a run through of that, check their foot pegs, make sure they're correct, make sure their seats are adjusted. If they have a seat insert because they're a little bit of a shorter athlete, make sure the seat insert is in there. Make sure the paddle is set up how they like it. If they like it flat, if they have a tilt to it, 40 degrees or so is how some athletes like theirs. Make sure that's set up so we're not doing that at the last minute. And again, make sure your flotation's in there. Just make sure your athlete's boat is ready to go before one of our volunteers grabs it to bring it to staging. It gets really difficult when we're racing against the clock as we're moving divisions down the beach and we're still working on these things. So just a good reminder for folks to check these things before we get competition really rolling. Again, on water safety, We will do everything we can to line up athletes and unify partners at the start line and do a held start to get them straightened out. Again, in the Chesapeake or the Chester River there, the tide and the way the water pushes from time to time can be a little hard to steady yourself. So we will assist there. Again, we're not allowing coaches on the water. That hasn't been something we've done in the past, and we're still not doing that. Unless we previously work that out. If there's something where you need to be on the water, please let me know ASAP, and let's work that out before we get there. And again, athletes and partners must remain in the kayak at all times while in the water. Legs must be in the kayak at all times. If they dump, that's a totally different story. Again, hopefully they're used to dumping and potentially used to recovering as well. If not, we will assist them. Again, if an athlete dumps, they have an opportunity to get back into the boat before our kayakers and or safety boaters will assist them to try to finish the race. Starting the race, we will always start the race the same way. Mike Meyer stands out there. He yells, "Are you ready?" or "Racers ready?" And then he sounds the air horn. And there's also a hand motion for hearing impaired athletes as well. We will always have a visual and a sound cue to go along with the start. Again, red flag is raised at the start or finish line area will indicate an infraction on that lane. Again, no coaching from the shoreline from coaches, assistant coaches, family members, spectators, delegation members. Remind your family members, go Johnny, go, you're doing a great job. All that stuff is perfectly fine, but there's no coaching of, we get into a very thin line of coaching with paddle faster. I know it comes out naturally sometimes that you want to yell paddle faster, but we're trying not to coach our athletes from the shoreline. Again, they've worked, 8, 10, 12 weeks at this, and you've set them up for success. Let them do their thing, cut them loose, let them show what they've got. Again, the reminder about if an athlete or a partner falls out of the kayak, they'll be given that chance to re-enter the boat. Safety boaters, for the most part, will just make a safety call on that. They'll give them a 1-2 shot to kind of get back in the boat, and then they'll kind of just make the call and go grab them and try to help them out. But again, the time can't elapse more than 3 minutes. We typically don't get that far. Athletes typically don't want it to get that far if they dump out of the boat. And again, we will make that call based on safety. And again, for time trials, if they dump for some reason and we got to go pull them out of the water, we will rerun them. We will 100% rerun them. We don't want a 0 time for them because they dumped and couldn't get back in the boat. And that's it. That is all the information that we have to share with you. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Feel free to reach out to Steve Bennett. Feel free to reach out to Mike. All of us are around to assist you if you need anything. And we're here to help you guys set up for success for this coming time trials weekend. Mike, is there anything that you want to add before we take questions at the end here?
Nothing other than, again, thank you to everyone. It's been a challenging year and a half overall. We're absolutely thrilled to be back at Washington College and are looking forward to seeing you and your athletes in a week and a half. And just thank you so much for everything you're doing.
So last shot for questions here before my one-on-one session with Mr. Al Jank. Is there anybody else that has a question that wants to ask? Pam, what's up?
I might have missed it. Where do you want us to send you the copies of the medical, the cards or whatever for the shots?
Pam, we'll include it in the follow-up email, but it'll be to coaches@somd.org.
Oh, yes, the one to, yes.
Yeah, that'll go right to Dottie and she'll have it then. Okay, yep.
Okay, and then another thing which was not listed and most of our guys wear them anyway is to wear a hat that day also.
Yes. No, you guys will see me out there in my Special Olympics bucket hat. I got to protect both my face and my neck from sunburn. So I highly recommend that too.
And I had something else, but I can't remember. Sorry, I was late.
No worries, Pam. No worries. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Any other questions?
Not right now.
I'm not seeing any. So I will reiterate what Mike said. Again, thank you guys so much for everything that you've done. I think everybody's been really excited to get back to a relatively normal season. I think everybody's been really excited to get back to training. And again, without you guys being willing to be out there to host trainings, to train your athletes to get better every week, we don't get as far as a time trials and championships opportunity. So again, it's a phenomenal job by all of you guys as coaches, assistant coaches, volunteers, sports volunteers, whatever it may be, unified partners. You guys as a team have done phenomenal jobs to get your athletes this far. And again, thank you, and thank your parents for us if we can't see all of them during time trials and championships weekend, for all the efforts that they put in getting their athletes to practice, being consistent, being support systems for their athletes. And just providing opportunities to get their athletes where they need to be to, compete at the level that they compete at. So thank you guys again. And you are free to go. I think I'm giving you back. Oh, I lied. I took 7 extra minutes. So I owe you 7 minutes at some point further in the future. If not, have a great evening and we will talk to you soon.